Welcome Wargamers, this is Doug with 2 Plus Stuff, and today we are taking a second look at the lore behind the man, the myth, the legend, Nagash himself, Lord of the Dead. Now I already did some lore on Nagash in this video, which I'll link to here and also in the description down below. In there we recapped kind of his history in the old world, brought him into the Age of Sigmar. However, Legions of Nagash has just dropped this weekend, and we have a ton more lore about what's happened since the Age of Sigmar has begun. In fact, since the setting has begun with the ending of the old world. And because of that, we have so much cool stuff to talk about. Now, in the stories about Nagash, there is a small recap of what happened in the old world. That the old world was shattered, and all of the people that we now know as gods in Age of Sigmar were kind of bereft and broken and kind of floating around. And Sigmar was one of the first ones to kind of regain a sentience, a consciousness, if you will, kind of be woken up. And while he was traveling and experiencing the realms and trying to get a foothold on what's going on during the Age of Myth, he found Nagash. And Sigmar, realizing that chaos will eventually come back to try and claim these new realms that he's found, decided, okay, every realm has to have someone who's in charge of it, right? And so obviously, Nagash being near the realm of death, he kind of put him there, woke him up, and kind of put him in a place of control. And that kind of ends Sigmar's involvement with Nagash. Kind of riled him up, kind of gave him a place to stay, so to speak. But then kind of segued into doing other things like the rest of the story that we have for Sigmar. Again, Age of Myth is very vague, a lot of broad strokes, so that's kind of expected. But what we get to is a more concrete image after Nagash is established in the Realm of Death. His first plan of action was to kill every other god in the area. Now this raises an interesting point that the Battle Tome brings out. There are other gods. My understanding is that all of the races that worshipped various deities in the old world, those deities in some level have come over. However, the real players that we are introduced to are the ones that have lasted and overcome. A few names come to mind of lesser gods of death that might have been taken and absorbed, and the closest one is Mor, M-O-R-R, was a god of death in the old world. The scenery piece that we used to have, like the graveyard one, used to be called the Garden of Mor. But regardless, Nagash goes around and starts destroying and absorbing all other factions in the realm of death, until eventually he asserted absolute dominance over the realm itself. Again, we don't know how long the Age of Myth lasted. It must have been quite a lot of time. But at the dead center of the realm, he erects this amazing city, called, of course, Nagashs. Now, this place was pretty baller, okay? It exuded death magic from the core of it, like so much so that mere mortals couldn't really approach the city. You would begin to age and wither and turn into a skeleton that was subservient to Nagash just by walking up to it. And to construct kind of the architecture of the city and also some of its more important aspects, he actually discovered a new resource, which I do believe is going to become very important in Age of Sigmar, and that is called Realmstone. Think of it as magic taken physical form. It's described often as a rock or some type of mineral that can be mined and things like that, but Nagash uses this to construct several edifices in Nagashs, giving that kind of death power. This is the stuff of pure realm energy, meaning Shyish energy at this point in the Realm of Death. It's making his city just this amazing nexus of death power. In fact, one of the major kind of construction projects that Nagash sets out to do is there are multiple upside down pyramids floating around Nagashs. Now, if you remember from the first lore video we did, one of the things that Nagash did in the end times was take command of a giant black pyramid, and he used it as a funnel. All death magic flowed into the pyramid, and he controlled it, so therefore he kind of asserted himself as the Lord of Death. What we're seeing here is a very similar thing, that several aspects of these pyramids are able to channel, funnel, and amplify death, magic, and energy. And of course, it does actually point out that there's multiple of these floating around Nagashs. And really, for the Age of Myth, that's kind of what we're given. Age of Myth ends with Nagash in absolute authority. He has a great hold on not only the kind of people and people and mortals living in his realm, but also just the power of death itself. Now, if you watch this channel quite a bit, you know that I'm somewhat skeptical of anything that happens in the Age of Myth because they paint it with broad strokes. Like, I wanted to know more about Nagash's brokenness after the end times, and I wanted to know more about Sigmar's kind of setting him up and what that really looked like, and what kind of terms they were on at that point. I think those stories are very important, but things happen in the Age of Myth are never really gone into much detail or given a whole lot of life. However, we're moving out of the Age of Myth into the Age of Chaos, and this is where real stories and more concrete things tend to take place. So just as Sigmar predicted, Chaos begins to turn its eye towards the mortal realm and puncture through in certain places. At first, it's very minor things. If there's enough battle between some of these, what we would call order factions happening, some demons might puncture through, or if there's a nexus of power, they might be able to get a few demons in. And these kind of punctures kind of start adding up, and they start amplifying, and things become much more intense over time. In fact, there are a few somewhat large chaos incursions. Now, these incursions ultimately led to a very, very important battle in the history of the mortal realms, and that's called the Battle of the Burning Skies. Now, if you're keeping up with Age of Sigmar lore, this is the battle where Nagash is kind of blamed as sort of this traitor of the pantheon of gods. For the longest time, we've been told that he somehow let chaos in. Without really any kind of understanding of what that meant, there was initially a lot of skepticism, like, well, maybe Manfred did it, and Nagash is being blamed. What we're seeing now, we get a much more definitive picture in the Legions of Nagash book. This Battle of the Burning Skies was extremely important in repelling a massive chaos assault. And all of the gods of the Pantheon agreed, okay, we're going to go, and we're going to be there, and we're going to fight this together, because defeating chaos is more important than our individual wills. But, come the day of the battle, Nagash didn't show up. And here's why I think so. Nagash has this firm grip on his realm. Nothing escapes his notice, because everyone who dies goes to him. Right? There's no realm outside of the touch of Nagash. And, as an important note, dead things or things with death magic in them cannot be corrupted to chaos. So my idea is that he wanted order to fail, so that chaos comes in, and then he will then feed off all the death and carnage that causes, only get stronger, and then he will go out and conquer everything. This was the titular event that set off the Age of Chaos. No, he didn't open a door to the realm of chaos and let them pour in, but his actions decided the fate of the mortal realms for a long time. So Sigmar, escaping that battle, they lost the land, but they all survived, all the gods did, and he is livid. He gets distracted by his rage. Instead of fighting chaos and trying to kind of manage the situation, he takes a huge army and marches on Shyish. Right, Sigmar loses sight of the main goal of repelling chaos and gets kind of bogged down with this narrow-sightedness. I need to make Nagash pay for what he did. And that short-sightedness, that loss of the goal, I think is what really made the Age of Chaos really, really happen. Yes, this battle is portrayed as being extremely important, but now not only is the Pantheon broken, but instead of fighting the actual enemy, Chaos, Sigmar is actually going to fight someone else in the Pantheon. Now, it's reported that Sigmar goes and just tears through the realm of death. He's just knocking out swaths of armies. I mean, he is like destructive in a way that we have yet to see in the books. But ultimately, he doesn't actually catch Nagash. Despite his efforts, he just can't get to him. I think the overwhelming battle between Chaos, it catches up to him. He finally gets his wits about him and realizes that he's focusing on the wrong thing. And we know at this point that Nagash is still in charge. His legions are damaged because Sigmar tore through there like a wrecking ball. And Sigmar goes back to the other realms, is seeing the destruction that's happening, and begins to realize this is not working. And so this series of events that Nagash triggered is what puts Sigmar in Azir with all the realm gates locked. The Pantheon's broken, he's being betrayed, he can't win against Chaos, and so he has to find another way. Now at this point, Nagash is feeling pretty darn good, right? He got what he wanted. Sigmar's not hunting him in particular anymore, and now they're all fighting Chaos, and he can kind of reconsolidate the forces he has. He's getting new souls coming in every single day from the war that's going on, and things are going to go great. Well, after Sigmar locks the door, which would normally be a boon to Nagash, who has one less enemy to face, the Barrow Wars begin. Now what are these? This is a kind of a local term within the realm of death that they give to the series of campaigns that Archaon led into the Realm of Death. Meaning Archaon was like, I need to fight Nagash because I need to take on the next god because Sigmar locked the door. So I'm going to pick the next biggest guy and pick a fight with him. So Chaos, instead of going everywhere all at once, Archaon leads his Ever-Chosen straight into the Realm of Death. And it's an absolute massacre on both sides. In the end, Nagash fights Archaon on the doorstep of Nagashs, his main city. Nagash is struck down by his sword, the Slayer of Kings, by Archaon, and right before he can deliver the fatal blow, kind of the battle parts and the Mortarchs are able to launch a counter-assault, push Archaon back enough, they scoop up Nagash's physical form, and escape with him. So Nagash is a broken god. Archaon has full reign over Nagashs, which is the capital. Remember, all the death magic's funneling through there, and he absolutely lays waste to the city. Leaves no stone unturned. And with that kind of nexus of death magic destroyed, Chaos has ample opportunity to reign and spread and infect the entire realm. Which pretty much brings us up to where we have been when Age of Sigmar started, with Chaos kind of being a dominant force in every realm. Sure, there's pockets of resistance and kingdoms that have escaped, but largely it's all kind of owned and operated by Chaos. Well, what happened to Nagash in that time? The Mortarchs pulled him away and brought him to some place called Styx, is how I'm going to pronounce that. And this is something similar that we saw with Alariel, where there was the Realm of Life, but there was kind of this little pocket realm, if you want to call it that, almost like a secret little layer to it. And it's the same kind of concept. It's in the Realm of Death broadly, but it is its own little mini realm, if you will. And we learned all about this in Nagash, the Undying King. And Styx is a pretty cool place. There's multiple doors to get there, but they move, like the location of where that door is on the opposite end moves every couple of months, and so it makes it really hard for any enemy forces to actually find a stable way to get to Nagash to kill him. And here Nagash needs to rest. This is what most of the story has been for the last 2 years or so since Age of Sigmar has been out. If you want to learn more about this, I really do recommend the book Nagash Undying King. It gives us a great idea of Nagash's power everywhere in the mortal realms, meaning anyone who dies feeds Nagash's power. But also there's kind of a duality to all the gods where they have this power that's everywhere, but also they do have a physical form, and his physical form was broken and needed to heal. During that time, he was still alive, still absorbing power, but his consciousness was kind of waning. He was kind of everywhere. He couldn't really focus his power anywhere. He didn't really start to come to until Sigmar opened the gates and the sudden boom and thunder of his warriors snapped Nagash out of it. And with that, he started to stir. And after much rest, Nagash is back in action. But where do you begin possibly to start rebuilding? Remember, Sigmar busted out of his realm, with his borders secure. He had a good place to fall back to, but Nagash has to start from scratch, as did Alariel. Well, the first thing you do is you plant a flag somewhere and you make a home base. So his first order was to retake Nagashs. In the time that he's been asleep, Chaos had erected 8 iron keeps all along the city that were on constant vigilance waiting for Nagash to return. Archaon knew he didn't kill him for good. So summoning hordes and waves of zombies and skeletons, he was able to tear down those forts. And of course, since you have a workforce that doesn't need to rest or sleep or eat, they immediately started to rebuild Nagashs. And now that he has a home base, he's about consolidation, right? What kind of assets does he have in the field? He starts kind of bringing all the death energy, everything back to him. He has to start re-erecting those pyramids, funneling that death magic to him, and just taking stock of the army that he has access to. A lot of people have died since he went down that he can raise. This guy has a lot of potential energy. And really the battle tome ends with that kind of assertion that he's back, he's bad, and he's ready to start moving to make the Realm of Death and also all of the mortal realms his subjects. So when we talk about where he is now and what his motivations are and things like that, the most important one is that he's awake and he's angry. That he rebuilt Nagashs. He's making it even bigger. There seem to be more of those black pyramids being built. We got glimpses of them during the Malign Port and sort of the reveal videos that were coming out. You can see the skeletons bringing Realmstone to the construction of more of those pyramids. He's consolidating his forces, Remember, some of these people have lived their entire lives without Nagash being around, so they think he's a myth. This is really strongly pointed at in Nagash Undying King. Some people don't think that he's real. So he not only needs to reestablish his kingdom, he needs to bring all his armies together and prove that he is who he says he is. And with all of that going on, as he reasserts his power and dominance, another thing has become extremely important to him, and that is this problem of soul theft. This is a heavy theme in this book. See, there is a natural order. Things die and they power Nagash. That's just what's supposed to happen. But some of the strongest, most potent souls that are out there are not going to him, and he feels the loss of power, that imbalance. And the book points out two main places of soul theft. And the first one, primarily, is Sigmar. He even calls him Sigmar the Soul Thief. What the reforging process is, as we now understand it, is not just a matter of preventing people from, their souls going to Shyish. It's stealing them. It's an abomination to the natural order according to Nagash. Those souls belong to him, and Sigmar takes them for himself, asserting himself as some lesser god of death, but that cannot be. Nagash actually has a team of necromancers and magicians and wizards all trying to figure out, how does he do this? How does he take the souls? And I love the fact that he doesn't know yet, that there's something that's such an affront to him, and he also, like us, has to figure it out. Now, the second main place of souls being stolen, which we're going to talk about in another video here coming up, is the elves. See, we haven't really talked about elves, and this is the last place that I'd expect to find any information about them, but it does call out Tyrion and Malarian very clearly as the thieves of elven souls, which, because of their immortality, are really, really valuable to Nagash. We'll talk about that in that video. I'm going to do a whole thing dedicated to what we've learned about elves so far. But as he's kind of consolidating his forces and trying to regain power and control, he is noticing this deficit in power because these two factions, Sigmar and the elves, are taking things that should be his. And just a few little things I want to note here at the end that the Battle Tome really, I don't want to say harped on, but reminded us of multiple times, is that whatever is infused with this death magic can't be corrupted by chaos in the same way that other things can. And so that's part of his plan. I think he wants to make everything the realm of death so that no more chaos exists. If you remember back in our first video, we talked about the fact that Nagash is order. It just has to be his order. And I think that's exactly the theme that we get from this army, right? He can technically solve the chaos problem. The solution is just not what anyone else wants. And in addition to that, the book really drove home the fact that he is ancient beyond measure. And he acts like it, right? Anytime he does something, he is always playing the long game. He will wait you out. You can't kill him, and all things die. So it doesn't really matter to him, right? He's up for the long game. A lot of times in the older books, they seem to make him much more rash, I would say, in his decision making. And this one really emphasized he's not going anywhere, and he's not in a rush, and he's going to do things smarter this time. And folks, that only makes him more dangerous in these stories. And friends, that is the lore of Nagash Part 2, Age of Myth to present. That's everything we know, and I'm so excited for what they're doing with this character. As the Malign Importance campaign continues and we get more information, I want to be sharing with you. I would love it if they did a series like this for almost every realm, and if not, every god. I want to do a 3-part series on Gorkamorka and Sigmar and Ilario and all those things. This is so exciting and fascinating to see how these characters exist and interact, and we have such a more interesting view of these gods and how they fit into this universe. If you want more information about Nagash, of course there's part 1 to this video, which will be down in the links below, but also my book review on Nagash the Undying King, which I will also put in the links below. In Nagash the Undying King, we get a great sense of what the gods are like, the duality of a physical form, but also being everywhere. We see Nagash waking up and stirring in Styx, and what he takes the form as he kind of awakens, and how he's able to influence the events that happen in Shyish. It is an incredible book with an incredible ending. Nagash makes an appearance at the end that'll blow your mind, so strongly recommend it. And friends, I want to end this video with a few little announcements here. we are still doing our 5K giveaway. When I reach 5,000 subscribers, I'm going to look at a list of names here and give a $100 gift certificate to one of them. You can sign up for that raffle down below in the show notes. It'll bring you over to a survey, and any information that I ask there is just the same information that GW asks if you send someone a gift certificate. I'm not going to use or sell your personal information whatsoever. And if you'd like to support the channel in a more personal way, head on over to the 2+ Tough store. Right now I'm selling a gaming mat set in the realm of death, which is perfect if you are a Nagash or undead lover. I have a limited quantity and I'm not going to make any more, so once they're gone, they are gone for good. And if you can't do that right now, I completely understand. I'm just so thankful that you watched this video here with me today. And I look forward to seeing you in my next Age of Sigmar lore video. Thank you so much for watching, and happy wargaming.